All right. Happy draft day. It's finally here. That's right. The 2023 NFL draft is here. What I'm going to do is because I screwed up yesterday. Okay. I did the live stream on YouTube and I did not download it and have it so that people could get to it. So, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to try and get up some comments here is empty my notebook. Okay. Everything I know and think, archive it, put it here. So let's say it's live from 3 o'clock to uh Giants are gonna pick till 10:30, something like that. I got people mocking me. uh so I'm letting some people get in right here. First of all, let's start out with the 25th pick because that's the one that attracts the most attention. First round of interest, names people actually know. My belief is the Giants would like to get a cornerback at the 25th pick or in the first round. If maybe it involves moving up a few picks, maybe they can move back. But if they can get a cornerback, right? A CB1, a guy who in the future they could look at, because Adoree Jackson, what's his future with the Giants? He's in the last year of his contract. Is he really even a CB1? He has a long injury history on top of that, missed a lot of time last year. So the Giants need a cornerback one. They really need a wide receiver one, too. Probably not going to work out that way. We'll see. The two names that I'm most locked in on, I believe that the Giants have the most interest in and possibly getting in that range are Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers. In regards to the cornerbacks, we're talking about, okay, the first top tier, they're not going to get there. Christian Gonzalez and Witherspoon, they're going to be gone, long gone. Question is, does Deonte Banks from Maryland? Does Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State? Does Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State? Which one of them, if any, are available? Are Addison available at wide receiver? Is Zay Flowers available at wide receiver? I don't think Jackson Smith-Njigba will be. And not so sure about where the Giants stand on Quentin Johnson. I'm not going to eliminate it, but I have my doubts a little bit there. So, with that being said, my best guess at the 25th pick was Deonte Banks earlier today. Question is, I don't know if he's going to be there. I know the Giants like him. I know they'd like to add a cornerback. I just don't know if he's going to be there. Defensive line, Christian Smith is asking, what about any chance we take a defense? I think there's a chance, outside chance. There's some guys that maybe you could throw in the mix there. One of them that comes to mind is Myles Murphy from Clemson. But I think it would have to be the right scenario where some of the guys that they want at that wide receiver and cornerback position are not available. If their guys at wide receiver and cornerback are not available, then anything cuts on the table, right? That's when things open up. Who knows? Trade back also a significant option if that happens. All right, so let's start at the top here. Let's trade down and grab a corner. Yeah, I mean, the second round corners are pretty good. There's a guy who actually has first round talent that's going to drop because of some off the field stuff, Cam Smith. He's a guy that is interesting if it's not in the first round, although there are teams that are probably going to be scared. That I know there are teams that are going to be scared to draft him. Julius Brents, Keely Ringo, although I've heard some things about him too that were a little questionable. Clark Phillips, DJ Turner. There's a guy. But again, I think the Giants want a number one cornerback. And if one of those guys are there that I mentioned earlier, I think they're going to go. There was a lot of smoke about Brandon Ayuk. Any news on that? Heard Giants had interest. I haven't heard interest, and I've heard the same things you have. And I poked around about it. I haven't heard anything about the San Francisco 49ers wanting to trade him. He's probably their best natural wide receiver. The Niners are trying to win a Super Bowl. Why would they trade him right now? I haven't found anyone that told me that that's what they're looking to do. So I think I don't see that happening at the moment. Maybe there's something beneath the surface, but I haven't heard that definitively. Does Saquon situation have any bearing on late round RB situation for versus depth and elsewhere? Absolutely, because forget that he's on the franchise tag and he hasn't signed it yet. Let's just say he signs a franchise tag. What's Saquon Barkley's future? It's undetermined. He's on a 1-year deal. So clearly, that's a possibility of going running back at some point in the draft. My understanding is the Giants would like to get a cornerback, a wide receiver, and running back early. I'll address that running back situation. So, from what I've ascertained, the Giants are heavy into the uh, day 2, early day 3 running back situation. Let's say, maybe second round, but more likely third or fourth round, potentially adding a running back, even if Saquon Barkley's back. Okay. They want to add to that position, add offensive weapons. That's offensive weapons, especially if that running back can add more to the passing game in the now. Saquon Barkley played a league high 80+% of the snaps last season for the Giants offense, a league high for any running back. So the Giants certainly have room, even with him on the roster, for another running back. And it seems like they're looking at it. Some of the names I've heard mentioned this yesterday: Tank Bigsby, Chase Brown, Kendre Miller from TCU, Tyjae Spears from Tulane. Although I have heard from other people that there could be potentially something with Spears that teams are a little hesitant because of health-wise. So am I aware I'm looking like John Stewart these days? That's not a terrible thing. No one looks at John Stewart and said, "Oh, that guy's a disgusting-looking guy. I don't want to look like John Stewart." So I'll take that. Mark Thompson, appreciate you being here. Jake Oppenheim, could I see the Giants taking a running back and rescinding the tag to Saquon? I don't think they'd want to rescind the tag to Saquon because do they get any better right now for that? No, at best, they're staying in the same. You're running on the treadmill in the same place, right? But you're not going anywhere. So long term, it's a better investment, sure. But for the now, don't know about that. Massive salutes and respect to Tudo Azzurri, Big Boss Jordan Greens from our entire rugby club in Italy. So Italia, the Azzurri, beautiful. Thanks for tuning in. We should draft CB round 1, trade it up in the second round for best receiver available. I think that's a possibility, Jay Millie Rock. I do not think that's a bad thought process at all. Second, third round, prime spots for the Giants, potentially to move up a little bit. They have a lot of that extra draft capital. Joe Schoen mentioned it at his pre-draft press conference. They have a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, 2 5s. So maybe trading one of the 5s in the third round to move up in the third round. They draft number 89 right now. So let's say they want to go up to 60-something and grab a wide receiver that they like in the third round. I'm saying just hypothetically. Like they have those, maybe you could trade one of those 5s and move up. They have a 6 and 3 7s as well. So, what else? You're going to power bomb me through a table, Adam F. Okay. Interesting comment, but okay. Who are these veterans that beat reporters keep mentioning that the Giants may trade mid-round picks for? Look, I'm not going to sit here. You go ask them. I'm not going to sit here and tell you anything that's based on what other people say. If I know that there's a trade and it's in the works and I have it confirmed, I'll report it. I promise. Hey, Jordan, you think there's a good chance we trade up? I think there's a slight chance the Giants trade up in the first round. But if they do, we're talking just a few spots. Remember, 2 teams, Baltimore 22, Vikings pick 23. Both of them potentially looking at cornerbacks. Do the Giants maybe just want to move up, 4 or 5 picks, get above those 2 teams, get the cornerback. I might have just said cornerback that they like. What about them trading back and getting DJ Turner? I think that's a possibility, but DJ Turner's a little bit on the smallish side, right? Is he a true CB1? Do you really view him as a potential CB1 moving forward? I think that's questionable. Jordan, I don't understand the Jackson situation. Why would we not want to extend him? He played so well last year. I blame the head coach for his injury, but he has an extensive injury history, right? I mean, go back. He has missed a lot of games in his career. So I think that would be something that they'd be hesitant to do, especially right now. He was injured at the end of last year. They missed a lot of time. So, and also, is he really a true number 1? Is Adoree Jackson number 1? He gets paid a lot of money right now. David Haldeman, Northwestern DT, Adetamimwima Adebaware is a beast, the Northwestern guy. I would love him at 25. Yeah, I think that's a possibility, but really an outside possibility. I don't think that's at the top of the Giants list at this moment. A few mocks have us taking Gibbs at 25. Surely not. It would take the right mixture of events to happen, right? They can't trade out, everything, comes together. They can't get all the cornerbacks they want are gone. The wide receivers they want are gone. Because yes, it's a weapon to add, but uh, look, it's not ideal. I do not believe Joe Shane, if he given an ideal world and based on his comments the other day, really would like to use his first round picks on running backs. So I'd be surprised if they did that. Anything about us ditching a few of these late round picks to go back into maybe the third round? Yeah, but I mean, like I said, I think it's more likely they take their third round pick instead of picking at 89, move up and pick at like something like 60 or something. Heard any interest in Florida offensive lineman Torrance? Yeah, the guard. I haven't. I've talked to some people who really like him, but not with the Giants. So I don't know if that necessarily is the case. Do the 1 year DTs and Leonard Williams disqualify interior defensive line in round 1 or 2 for the Giants? What have you heard? No, I don't think that's the case. Leonard Williams, again, what's his future beyond this year? Huge cap numbers, right? So I don't really see that. Jonathan Mingo first round, I would doubt it. I think maybe, let's say they decide to move into the second round and trade out of the first. I think that would be safe to say that. Correct to say Porto Jr. has slid in his draft side. I think a little bit because I spoke to some people about this, some other teams. They believe that you need to have the right defense. He needs to be in a specific defense. He's not your ideal man cornerback or guy you want to have run with people. So I do think there's some uncertainty with him, definitely from other teams because I've heard it from other teams. Center, a lot of people bring up center. Someone wants Ricky Stromberg here. He's a guy I heard the Giants have interested in. Also, the top two guys, I believe, on the Giants board, from what I've heard, is Joe Tippmann and John Michael Schmitz. Not necessarily sure the order. It's believed that Schmitz is first. But again, it would be hard for me to see that as a first-round investment for the Giants. In a draft where there aren't a ton of first-round picks grades-wise on most teams' boards. I mean, I spoke to a team who has less than 10 players graded with first-round picks. Less than 10. That's unbelievable. That means the whole second half of the first round is just going to be wild, and that's kind of what I expect tonight. Joey Porter at 25 would be a steal. Yeah, it's a possibility. I think it's in the realm of possibilities. Maybe even more likely than Deonte Banks at this point. Miz needs center. Yeah, but this is a deep center draft. The Giants can get a guy. Todd McShay said he thinks there's 5 starting centers in this draft. I have it written down. Schmitz, Tippmann, Luke Whippler, Ricky Stromberg, and Oluwatamimi. I definitely butchered that. And also Bobby Johnson, the Giants offensive line coach, has been traveling around the country working out guys who aren't necessarily centers and working them out as centers. Guys like Cody Mock, right? You're talking about maybe in the second round, the Giants decide, we want him. We view him as he could be a guard. He could be a center. Maybe he even could play tackle. That's where he played in college. But we view that guy as a guy, maybe he could play center in the meantime, and we'll see, and then we can move him or whatever it is. The Giants have definitely looked at ulterior options to just a straight centers. So I find it hard to believe in a draft this strong and deep at center that they're going to then use their first round pick on a center. So I think their likelihood is the wait on that, especially if there's a cornerback or wide receiver they like on the board. Other things I've heard is I mentioned the running backs. Oh, Byron Young is a player, edge rusher. Second round, wouldn't completely rule it out. Maisie Smith, if the Giants move back in the first into the early second, or trade up in the second. Maisie Smith is sort of that interior guy. I believe they think he has that extra gear. He's not just a nose tackle that some people view him as. So that would maybe be a trade back option. So, yeah, defensive line is not something I would close the door on completely. Kalijah Cansey from Pittsburgh. I haven't heard anything directly on him, so I'm not positive on that one, but I have overall heard positive reviews from people around the league. So he would fit into that range if the Giants pick around there. Where does Bijan Robinson go? That's a real, head scratcher. I think somewhere in the middle of the first round, someone's going to pull the trigger on him. Top 10, that's a tough one to pull the trigger on it's pretty early, but I'm not so sure. Johnston, a real option. I do think he's an option. I'm not sure he's their top option at wide receiver, though. Buda Baker, Zadarius Smith, Jerry Judy, Hopkins, all these veteran deals like Waller, Greg Samples. I find it hard to believe that that's the way the Giants are going to go. They're not in the best shape financially to do that now after signing the Daniel Jones deal. Now, maybe after Dexter Lawrence signs an extension, they are in better shape. But I find it hard to see the Giants going in that direction for any of those big guys right now. Sorry. Michael Mayer is a Cowboy. Jason Witten the next 15 years. I'd be surprised if Mayer was their guy. A lot of buzz that I've heard about potentially Laporta to the Cowboys. McShayer has Mayer mocked to the Giants. Thoughts? Man, that's weird. They just invested, and I've seen it a couple people. They just invested in a guy like Darren Waller, right? They drafted Daniel Bellinger last year. A third tight end? Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, they literally dressed one tight end in Buffalo. Dressed one tight end. That would be an interesting approach. I just don't see that as being a real fit for the Giants to go tight end there. Maybe it's the best player available, and if they get locked in and the storm of events just leaves him in a spot where he's ranked that much more above everybody else, fine. Him or Gibbs, the running back out of Alabama. That's the only scenario that I find where they would draft either of those two guys. So, predictions for Hendon Hooker tonight. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't really know. I really don't have a good vibe on that, to be honest with you. But I do think someone would probably trade back into the first round to get Hendon Hooker because you want to get that 50-year option when you're talking about a quarterback. Other guys that you could see the Giants interested in, there's two Cincinnati receivers that are of interest in that second round range that I wouldn't completely rule out. Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker. Mingo is someone I mentioned before as a potential wide receiver to keep an eye on for the Giants. Jaden Reed, Michigan State guy, second, third round. Wouldn't completely rule that out. Those are some guys that I've heard there might be some interest. We'll see. Second, third round range. That's sort of to be another hot spot for wide receiver. Who's my favorite wide receiver? Man, I don't love any of these guys. And as in regards to what do the Giants need? The Giants need an alpha number one wide receiver. We all agree on that, right? They need a number one. When you talk to people about this draft, they don't love these guys, any of these guys, as your true number one. Here's a guy that I've heard a couple people told me they really, really like. They have the different teams who haven't been the Giants. Xavier Hutchinson, Iowa State, sort of like a third round type guy. But I've spoken to people who are actually very high on him. They really liked him. So maybe you could say that because I like Zay Flowers, at least because he has that ability after the catch to then go make plays and make yards. I like that explosiveness, but I'm not sure that necessarily makes him a number one receiver. It almost makes him Kadarius Toney, which we know didn't go that well. Let's see. What else do I have written down here? Tank Dell, another one to keep an eye on in that third round range. The Giants apparently do not care about this whole size thing. I mean, look at the profiles. A lot of those guys are just named that they have interest in. They're smaller, playmaking guys, can make yards, make big plays. The Giants are not seemingly entranced by the absolute need, and this isn't the best draft for it anyway, to get a big wide receiver. It just doesn't seem to be their preference. They don't care if their wide receivers are small. Plus, you also have to realize with the Giants receiving core, how many of these guys are really here in a year or two, right? Shepard's on a one-year deal. Paris Campbell's on a one-year deal. Slayton's deal ultimately could be a one-year deal. So Isaiah Hodgins is on, he was EFRA, restricted rights free agent. ERFA, restricted rights free agent. And so he's on a one-year deal. Like everyone's on a one-year deal. We don't know who's going to be in the Giants receiving core next year. So everything works, in my opinion. The only one we know that they drafted last year was Wan'Dale Robinson. It's the only one they're sort of committed to contractually. So everything really works. Jackson Smith-Njigba an option if he slides a bit? Yeah, I think it would be. Also, though, he's an interior guy. I mean, everyone I talk to does not think he's an outside receiver at all. So, but I do think the Giants would take him if he was there. Thoughts on trading for Brandon Ayuk instead? Yeah, I would love, and I think the Giants would be all into trading for Brandon Ayuk. But you tell me. Somebody tell me. Why do the 49ers want to get rid of Brandon Ayuk right now? Why would they want to get rid of him? Maybe they do. Maybe he's miserable. Maybe he's a pain in the ass, but I haven't heard that. I haven't heard anything like that. And they're trying to win a Super Bowl, right? They're a really good team. He's under contract. He's super cheap for them this year. Why trade him now? So, I don't know. Oh, Michael Wilson out of Stanford. I actually heard good things about the Stanford guy, to be honest with you, Adam. So, maybe. I haven't heard specifically the Giants, but I actually did hear good things about him as a player. Jordan, do you think it's possible we draft Brian Branch, you're talking about, if he's available at 25? I do think it's a possibility, but again, not among the top options because he's not a true even safety. Like he's one of these move pieces, move him around the defense. And I know Wink likes that, but I think when you're talking about premium picks and premium positions, I don't think Branch kind of falls into that. So, yeah, I think he's among the options, but I do not think he is the top option. Can Zay Flowers slide to 25? There are people in the league that would be surprised if Zay Flowers is a first-round pick. But there are also people in the league way higher on him that think he should be like in the top 15 range. So I think there is a possibility he ends up sliding down. I don't think it's likely, but I think it's a possibility. Will you be streaming during the draft? No, I got to work during the draft, so that's not going to be happening during the draft. Let's be real. We have holes everywhere, Harry, so we have to take the best player available this time. Well, let's be fair, Harry. You can't just say the best player available. It's not realistic. If the best player available is a quarterback, you're not taking him, okay? If the best available player is a running back in the first round, they have Saquon Barkley on the roster, they also should not take him, right? These are not in good investments. You have to marry best available and need, okay? And value and position. You want to draft premium positions in the first round. Yes, me. That's why I wouldn't take a center in the first round of this draft. It's not a premium position. You're basically drafting for a guy's brain. We just want a guy's brain and have him be serviceable and okay, help him get our offense in order, and then we could be fine at that position. So why then are you going to invest a significant amount of money, because when you're a first-round pick, you automatically get paid decent at least, in a position if you don't think it's a premium position? So that's why I would be a little bit surprised there. And yeah, as Svi says, trenches, or cornerback. Think about this for a second. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll come from Buffalo. Buffalo has been very big on drafting in the trenches, which is why if I said, Jordan, give me a sleeper, you have to pick a sleeper, it would be something like Steve Avila, like a guard who could slide in and replace center or something like that, because he does play offensive line, and no one's really talking about offensive line for the Giants. We're talking straight center. But at least Steve Avila provides a little bit more value than just a straight center, because technically most teams, I think, view him as a guard. Maybe the Giants said we could try him at center, see where that goes. Mark Lewinsky's not here forever. He could eventually be the successor there. So, and Kevin Donahue says, and Brandon Brown comes for the Eagles. Same thing. Edge rusher, wide receiver, and the lines. That's what the Eagles do, right? Over and over and over again. Harry P says, I'd rather take the number one center in the draft versus your fifth, sixth wide receiver or CB. We're not good enough to turn down good players. The problem is you're trying to fill premium positions, okay? And center is not a premium position. Wide receiver has turned into a premium position. So the idea with draft picks is you get cheap, good value at positions like wide receiver. It's not as good a value at center because you're paying him already significant money, which isn't far off from like mid-range centers. So, you're losing part of the value. I think you have to take that into account. And yeah, you're right. If you don't think that fifth or sixth wide receiver is very good, yeah, then you shouldn't go there. But I do think you have to take the position greatly into the equation. Deonte Banks or Joey Porter, that would be a tough one. I think, don't know, but I think that my gut tells me that Deonte Banks is a guy that they're really high on, that they would go in that direction. Jordan, you wanted Josh Rosen. I wasn't the biggest Josh Rosen guy, to be honest with you. I don't think that's true. I thought the Giants should draft a quarterback. I didn't necessarily like Josh Rosen that much. I heard some things about Josh Rosen where there were serious questions about him. Will McDonald, I don't think that's the direction the Giants are going to go. Evan Spitzberg says, hey, Jordan, how you doing? Forbes or Addison Flowers? Yeah, that's a tough one. In that spot, I think the Giants, they want to go cornerback, I think, in their ideal world. So I'll lean towards Forbes. I don't have a definitive answer for you on that. Lucas Van Ness, Jose Ayala suggests. Yeah, that was an interesting one. He was there in one of our mock drafts that we did for ESPN. I thought about it. Ultimately, I decided to pass on that. But definitely an interesting one. Forbes is a stud. Yeah, he's an interesting one because he's so skinny. I've never heard of a guy at 166 pounds at that position, basically at his height. Like, he has toothpicks for legs, like literally toothpicks he has propped up as his legs. Any chances they trade up or down? Yeah, I do. I think the Giants are going to be looking to be active. They poked around a little bit as far as I know, but every team calls everybody before the draft. So it's hard to find out what's real until teams are actually near or on the clock. But I do think that the Giants are definitely looking to move up in the second or third round in those middle rounds and use some of their extra picks. I do not think they intend to make 10 draft picks. My guess would be that they end up making probably 8. And Joe Schoen is very active. We've seen him be very active so far as general manager. I think that continues in this draft. We have 3 minutes left. Julius Brents, guy I think the Giants have shown interest in. Don't think he's at the top of their list, but definitely an interesting player in regards to talent, has all the physical skills. I've talked to some people who think he's a really good player. Do I think D-Hop will be moved tonight? I do think D-Hop will be moved by the end of this weekend. I do not think it's going to be to the Giants, though. Linebacker day 2 or 3. It's not a very good linebacker draft, so I don't think that's ultimately the way they end up going. Riley Moss, DRU, says, yeah, that's a player I mentioned the other day. Giants are very high on as far as I heard. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's a third-round option. If he's there in the third round, I think the Giants, especially if they don't take a cornerback earlier, that would be a player the Giants definitely look into taking in that spot. Thoughts on A'Shawn Robinson? Quality NFL starter, coming off injury, getting a little bit up there in age, but better for their defensive line depth than they've had in the past few years. Still think they would like to add another interior defensive player. Any internal optimism this year? Year 2, Flott, Neal, Azuda, Robinson, Bellinger, etc. Yeah, absolutely. I think the Giants are hoping that Evan Neal takes a huge jump. They're looking to see more from Cordell Flott. He got off to a little slow start last year, but came on later on in the year. I think they have high hopes for Azudu. He's going to get a fair chance to win the starting left guard job. Robinson, a little tempered because he's coming off injury. And Bellinger, yeah, I think they like Bellinger as a player and are going to use him. But obviously, he's not going to be used in the super featured role. That's why they got Darren Waller. They thought they needed more at the position. Thoughts on Tyreek Stevenson? I don't really have that many thoughts on Tyreek Stevenson. Sorry. Any late rounders you think they may be interested in? Yeah, don't have a ton on that. Like I said, Riley Moss is more like a mid-rounder. Ricky Stromberg, the center, a mid-round pick, also maybe like a fourth, somewhere around there. Stephen Jones from App State, a cornerback. I could see them looking at somebody like that there. I didn't really write down that many late round guys. Other guys that I see I have listed here is Zach Charbonnet, running back from UCLA. That, could end up on their radar. DJ Turner, Brian Branch, we mentioned before. Quan Martin, the guy who visited them. I expect the Giants to show that maybe they have some interest in him if the draft turns out right in that second roundish type deal. The end of that second round, that could be in play. He's sort of along the same lines as Branch, a guy that can move around and use a lot of different ways. I'm talking about Quan Martin there. All right. I was going to do this for a half hour. It's 2:30. I'm going to try and archive it now. If you missed it, glad you watched it. And you're at this point, glad you were able to watch it. I'm a YouTube noob, so I'm trying to make it work. I screwed it up yesterday. I didn't archive it. It wouldn't download. It wouldn't save on my phone. This time I taped it on my computer. So hopefully it fares better. All right, everybody, enjoy draft night. Keep in touch. Appreciate all of you for coming out here and watching. See ya.